HOA Karen band. My dad's old radio didn't know we're both former SEALs. The community center's parking lot was a battlefield of glares and whispers, but I didn't expect to walk into a war zone over a damn radio. My dad, Tom, a grizzled 65-year-old with hands like weathered oak, clutched his vintage Zenith Transoceanic like it was his last tether to the past. That radio had been his companion through decades, through Navy SEAL missions, in places he still wouldn't talk about, through nights when Mom was sick, through the quiet years after she passed. Karen, the HOA president, had other plans. She strutted out of the community center that evening, her clipboard clutched like a scepter, her lips pursed in that way that screamed she was about to ruin someone's day. "No electronics at the potluck," she declared, pointing at Dad's radio like it was a live grenade. "It's in the bylaws. You're disrupting the ambiance." Dad chuckled, low and gravelly, tuning the dial until Johnny Cash's voice crackled through. "Ambiance, lady. This radio's got more soul than your potluck." The crowd neighbors balancing paper plates of coleslaw and overcooked ribs stifled laughs. Karen's face turned the color of her over-bleached highlights. I stood a few feet behind Dad, my arms crossed, trying not to smirk. At 38, I'd seen my share of Karens in my time as a SEAL, but this one, she was a special kind of tyrant, the kind who'd fine you for a blade of grass out of place. "Turn it off, or I'll have it confiscated," she snapped, scribbling something on her clipboard. "Confiscated," I stepped forward, my voice calm but edged. "It's a radio, not a weapon?" Her eyes flicked to me, sizing me up like I was some punk kid. "You must be Jake, Tom's son. I've heard about you. Don't think your military bravado intimidates me." The air thickened. Dad shot me a look, half warning, half amusement. We'd faced worse than Karen in our time insurgents. Storms at sea, nights when survival wasn't guaranteed. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was our neighborhood, our home, and Karen was turning it into her personal fiefdom. The potluck was supposed to be a simple affair, a chance for the neighborhood to come together after a rough year. Dad had been excited, polishing that radio for days, eager to share stories of how it kept him sane during deployments. He'd even brought a playlist of 60s folk tunes, thinking it'd spark some nostalgia. But Karen had been tightening her grip on the HOA for months, new rules every week. Fines for everything from unapproved mailboxes to excessive holiday lights. Last month, she'd banned Mrs. Carter's garden gnomes, claiming they lowered property values. Now, she'd set her sights on Dad's radio. "Jake," Dad muttered, "let it go. She's not worth it." But I could see the hurt in his eyes. That radio wasn't just a thing, it was his history, his anchor. I wasn't about to let some power-tripping bureaucrat take it from him. The next day, Karen escalated. A notice arrived at our doorstep: violation, unauthorized electronic device. Fine $200, immediate confiscation required. Dad read it, his jaw tight, then tossed it on the kitchen table. "She's not getting it," he said, his voice low, like he was planning a mission. I nodded. Then we fight back. We started small, digging into the HOA bylaws. Turns out, Karen's no electronics rule was never voted on. It was her own invention, slipped into the fine print during a meeting most folks skipped. We rallied a few neighbors: Mrs. Carter, still bitter about her gnomes, and Luis, a mechanic who'd been fined for parking his work truck in his own driveway. Together, we planned to confront Karen at the next HOA meeting, but Karen wasn't playing fair. The day before the meeting, I caught her snooping around our garage. Dad was at the VA, so I was alone when I saw her through the window, peering at the radio on his workbench. "What the hell are you doing?" I called, stepping outside. She didn't flinch, ensuring compliance. She said, her tone dripping with superiority. "Your father's been warned." "Get off our property," I said, my voice steady but cold. She smirked, scribbling on her clipboard. "You'll regret this." That night, I told Dad. His face darkened, but he just said, "She's digging her own grave." Jake. I didn't know what he meant, but I trusted him. He'd always had a knack for seeing through people like Karen. The HOA meeting was packed, the community center buzzing with tension. Karen stood at the podium, her usual smugness dialed up to 11. She rattled off her agenda, new fines, stricter rules while neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Then it was our turn. Dad stood, holding the radio like a shield. This, he said, his voice steady, has been with me through wars, through loss. It's not just a radio. It's my life. And you, Karen, have no right to take it. The room went quiet. Mrs. Carter nodded fiercely. Louise clapped. Karen's eyes narrowed. The rules apply to everyone, she said. No exceptions. I stood next to Dad. Those rules weren't voted on. You made them up. We checked the bylaws. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's composure cracked. Just for a second. Then came the twist we didn't see coming. A soft voice piped up from the back. Mrs. Ellison, the 80-year-old widow who barely spoke at meetings. She hobbled forward, clutching a stack of papers. I've been keeping records, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Karen's been skimming HOA funds. Thousands of dollars. I have proof. The room erupted. Neighbors shouted, demanding answers. Karen's face went white. That's absurd, she sputtered. She's senile, but Mrs. Ellison held up bank statements, emails, receipts, evidence of Karen's secret renovation fund that never materialized. The crowd turned on her, their anger a living thing. Dad and I exchanged a glance. This wasn't our plan, but damn if it didn't feel right. Karen tried to regain control, banging her gavel. This is a setup. You're all jealous of my leadership. Leadership, I shot back. You're a bully, and you're done. The meeting spiraled into chaos, but it was just the beginning. The next evening, we held an emergency potluck to vote Karen out. She showed up, uninvited, her eyes wild. You can't do this, she screamed, storming into the parking lot where we'd set up tables. Dad's radio was playing softly, Dylan's blowing in the wind, and Karen lost it. She grabbed the radio from the table, raised it over her head, and smashed it onto the asphalt. The crack echoed like a gunshot. The crowd froze. Dad's face went still. The kind of still that scared me when I was a kid. The kind that meant he was holding back a storm. Karen, he said, his voice low, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. I stepped forward, my fists clenched, but Dad put a hand on my shoulder. Not like that, Jake. Karen laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. You're nothing without your precious radio, and you can't touch me. But she was wrong. Mrs. Ellison's evidence had already reached the police. As Karen ranted, 2 cruisers pulled into the lot. The crowd parted as officers approached, cuffs in hand. Karen Mitchell, you're under arrest for embezzlement and vandalism. Her smugness shattered. She screamed, flailing as they cuffed her, her clipboard clattering to the ground. The spilled coffee from her overturned cup mingled with the broken pieces of Dad's radio, a fitting symbol of her downfall. As they led her away, the crowd cheered, but Dad just stared at the wreckage of his radio. I put a hand on his shoulder. We'll fix it, I said. He shook his head. Some things can't be fixed, but justice. That's enough. The neighborhood changed after that. We voted in Mrs. Ellison as interim HOA president, and she scrapped Karen's rules overnight. Dad and I started a new tradition, weekly potlucks with music. No restrictions. We even found an old radio at a thrift shop. Not as good as the Zenith, but it played Dylan just fine. Karen's trial was quick. The embezzlement charges stuck, and she was ordered to pay restitution. Last I heard, she'd moved out of state, her reputation in ruins. Some said she was still sending angry emails to the HOA, but no one cared enough to read them. Dad and I never talked much about our seal days. But that night, as we cleaned up the potluck, he said, you know, Jake, we didn't need to fight her with fists. We fought with truth. That's what wins. I nodded, thinking of the radio, of Karen's smug face as she smashed it, of the crowd's cheers when she fell. Truth had won, but it was the fight, the messy, human fight that made it sweet. What do you think, was Karen's punishment fair? Or did she deserve worse? Share your thoughts below.